Me. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending where you are in the world. It is the title decider weekend. For the first time in 4 years, we have a championship that will go down to the final race. Today is qualifying for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It starts in 1 hour time, and we have a lot to talk about because this has been an entertaining couple of weeks leading up to this point. We have 3 drivers all in contention. All of those 3 drivers are in this picture on the left-hand side of your screen. This time last year, Lando Norris won the race. Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri crashed out of the first corner. Not out. They did manage to stay in the Grand Prix, but Lando, with the result last year, would win without too much of a fight. He's looked good in practice so far this weekend, but it's a different thing at converting that on a qualifying day when the pressure is well and truly on. Welcome everyone. I hope you're excited for this because it's going to be a big weekend. I'm sure it's not going to be one without its controversy. Can anyone else get into the mix? That is a good question. Yuki Tsunoda was trying his best today in free practice 3 to get involved. We'll certainly discuss that, whether there's any games being played from Red Bull, which I'm sure that there are. I think it would also be a big surprise if Red Bull don't give Yuki some instructions on what to do on Sunday, but I can't imagine Yuki is going to be a factor so much in qualifying in a 1 hour time. But George Russell ends up topping the session. So maybe the theory that Mercedes are the team to watch is very much true. Look, Lando Norris knows that 3rd place tomorrow is enough. But in an ideal world, he would like to qualify on pole position with Max Verstappen not alongside him. Because if Max Verstappen is alongside him tomorrow, then, well, you can only imagine what might be happening in turn 1. The advantage in Abu Dhabi is that there's at least plenty of runoff at turn 1. So if there was to be a bit of a dive bomb, Lando would be able to say, okay, let me just step out of this and live to fight another day. He knows he only needs a podium. Max, of course, effectively needs to win the race. And looks like that's possible. Red Bull have been trying hard on their long-run pace setup. Well, look, Zweb, Ferrari were somewhere for about 10 minutes of FP3 before then Hamilton ends up into the wall. Yeah, maybe Hamilton was just prepping, you know. Maybe that was the maybe that was his Nicholas Peak, like a Nelson Piquet Jr. moment where he practices the crash in the practice session before everything gets underway. So, look, we'll see. I think Norris does go in as favourite for pole. His sector 3 is mighty. Nobody else can match him through that sector right now. But in the first couple of sectors, it's not like McLaren have a load of straight line speed. So if Lando is going to get pole, he will do it in sector 3. I think that Max will definitely find something this afternoon. You know how it is. But yeah, welcome all. We've got a lot to talk about. The Formula 2 sprint race has just finished. We have a 57-minute countdown. There's no questions about rain or weather or any of that today. Is it a turn 1 championship is a good question. I'm certainly looking forward to turn 1 to right. I did mention in a video the other day, so tomorrow I'm swimming in a competition, and usually these competitions, they're team competitions, they usually happen, well, they're always October, November, December every year on basically the first weekend, but they're typically always Saturday nights. But it turns out that our team did quite well, so we are in the A final, which happens to be on Sunday at 12:30. So, you know, I couldn't believe it, but whatever. Myself and some of the other lads there, we will be watching from the phone on poolside because, yeah, the first few laps tomorrow are going to be critical. And then fast forward to lap 53 and see if anyone puts it in the wall. So, yeah, Just Dragon with the €5. What do you think top 5 will be in qualifying? We'll discuss that over the coming hour because I've not yet made up my mind. I think it will be Norris, Verstappen, Russell, Piastri. This isn't in order. I'm just trying to think of the 5 drivers that will be there. I'm trying to think if maybe Leclerc could sneak in. Maybe Antonelli. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Mercedes, McLaren, Max. But yeah, the order will come to that. We'll definitely come to that. Yeah, I also can't believe they didn't take the F1 into account when they scheduled that, because it's just outrageous. So yes, George obviously is in the mix. He was topping. It's just like it's an arena league competition. It's called. It's basically like a team competition. We made it through to the A final of the Northwest region. So I'll be swimming in the open age group. They're bringing in the big guns for this one. Anyway, speaking of big guns, let's talk about what happened on the track today. Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all is this that I saw floating around the timeline. Formula One is planning something, I would say, for tomorrow before the race. Last night I saw Louis Vuitton boxes, surely the trophies for each Grand Prix this year. There were Monza, Spa stickers. It could turn out brutal, and I think it's something unprecedented, all the trophies together. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this, or what exactly they would do. I don't imagine they're going to do anything before the race unless they have all the trophies like lined up in some sort of like glitz and glam kind of entertainment showcase spectacle. Like, this is gold standard of Formula One, right? The idea of a championship coming down to the final round for them is that, you know, they're frothing at the mouth. So they're definitely going to find some ways, I think, to exploit it. Thanks, Mr. Doshot 2010 for the 5 USD. Recognize that name. Thankfully, new regulations next year. Well, precisely, right? This is the final weekends of these regulations. The final weekend of DRS for some time. DRS may come back at some point, but certainly it's not going to be here for the next few years. So DRS is gone. These cars have had their ups and downs. I mean, they're spectacular to watch at certain tracks, but at other tracks, it's not quite the same, and the quality of the racing has declined substantially over the last couple of years. It's an interesting season because there have been some great races this year, but we have a championship where the result, like, you know, tomorrow's going to be great. We've had a fantastic fight, but I wouldn't say there's too many races this season that stand out to me as like, wow, we had such a great season of entertainment. There was some good ones. There were some stinkers. It is what it is. Next year will be different in a couple of ways, I think, right? Like, we're going to see as two sides of the story. Next year, there will be more gaps between the teams, I think. Qualifying is probably going to be less good, but I do imagine the racing should be better anyway. So, yeah, they're cooking up something for tomorrow's race, according to these rumours. The other thing that, of course, we have to discuss here before we get into what happened today is McLaren and papaya rules or whatever. So, yeah, I mentioned in yesterday's video that there was this rumour that they were stopping the garages from talking to one another. And it seems like that is not true. I mean, I don't know. I mentioned in yesterday's video that there was an article that said that was true, and then there was some other discussion that said that wasn't so true. So who really knows? But what we do know is that Zach Brown said not long ago that, well, if it's like 2007 and Max wins and both of the McLaren boys lose, then it is what it is. He did a better job. But of course we know that they don't want to do that. They want to win the title, and they want to win both titles, obviously. It's also worth saying that for the last, I mean, how many years has it been? I want to say it's been like 16 years since Button won in 2009. That there has been a driver winning the drivers who wasn't a Red Bull or a Mercedes driver, right? I mean, isn't that quite remarkable? It's been 16 years since we've had a non-Red Bull, or obviously it was Vettel, Hamilton, Rosberg, Verstappen, or like obviously Hamilton again, then Verstappen. So it's been a long time, and tomorrow could be the day. Today will be critical to get us to that point. Look, Piastri had a fantastic weekend last time out in Qatar, which didn't come as much of a surprise to many of us. I think, okay, he was obviously in a slump of form, but Qatar is a circuit that just suits his style so well. But I felt it was doubtful that he was going to turn up to Abu Dhabi and be quite as competitive. Obviously, he missed FP1 yesterday, which was suboptimal. He got within a couple of tenths today. It wasn't bad, but yeah, I don't know. Piastri he needs to find more, obviously, today, if he is going to be in position to win the championship. Like, it feels to me that if Piastri is to win the title, he's going to need Max and Lando to like crash each other out of the race or something. It's difficult to imagine that Piastri is going to be able to win. Lando's going to end up 6th without some sort of first lap, first corner controversy. But yeah, who knows? Hey Rab, what if Yuki slowed down and be ahead of Lando and defend him to help Max? Is it allowed? Well, I mean, we saw this, right? Back in 2021 when Sergio Perez did exactly that. Now, I think there's a little bit of, not hypocrisy precisely, but I've seen a lot of people suggesting that team orders for the championship is outrageous, right? It should never be allowed. It's not fair. It's pathetic that McLaren are considering using team orders, because Zak Brown says it. He's like, look, if it's becoming clear that one of our drivers is not going to win unless we do something on the track, then it would be crazy not to do it. Which is, look, it's logical. Obviously, Zak Brown really is meaning if Lando is 4th and Piastri is 3rd and Max is leading, then we'll make the swap. But look, we see team orders affecting the championships before, right? I mean, as you know, when Perez was tasked to stay out late and hold up Hamilton, he gets past Hamilton again on the second DRS zone, and then he slows him down by about 10 seconds driving under the hotel. It's like, well, yeah, that team orders had consequences in that championship. And if it's the same this weekend, then it simply is what it is. I think the other thing that I consider when it comes to this is that Max does not... Okay, Max is obviously the best driver on the grid right now. But we know how Red Bull operate. They are a one-car team. They will sacrifice their second driver if necessary. So, like, the only reason why this is even still a fight for Max is because McLaren have given both of their drivers the opportunity, and that both of them are competitive drivers with one another. Otherwise, this championship would long be over. Like, if they had just decided that they wanted to do a Red Bull and they were going to back Lando to the hilt from race 1, then the championship would long be done, right? So I think that's also worth keeping in mind, that McLaren have... You know, their papaya rules have got them to the point where their drivers are competitive with one another for, you know, whatever you want to say about that and all the controversy. But also Max is still in the fight. So if they decide to use papaya rules to get them the win, then I don't think that's totally outrageous. I don't know what Oscar Piastri will think about it. Thanks all for tuning in. We've got well over 500 viewers in here now. If you haven't hit the like button yet, I would appreciate it. Loads of new subs as well over the last few days, which is really appreciated too. It's obviously been an entertaining couple of weeks in the world of Formula 1. Let me read the chat again a little bit. I'll get into the Lewis crash in a second, actually. I think it's probably a little bit of both on that one. Oscar has been sabotaged for half the season. Without the swap at the British Grand Prix, he'd be in second place, 1 point behind Lando. What do you mean the swap at the British Grand Prix? I mean, yeah, I guess you mean the penalty, which was justified. I don't know. Like, I think the penalty was justified, to be honest. Look, has Oscar... Look, if you believe that Oscar has been sabotaged, then how do you explain Qatar, right? Because in Qatar, you would expect... If they'd been deliberately sabotaging him, then why was he all of a sudden back to looking like godlike and Lando was kind of nowhere, right? So I just think Oscar went through a few tracks where he'd struggled before, and he had struggles, and that affected him mentally as well. And then when it got to the point in Qatar, a track where he has gone well historically, and also he felt the pressure was somewhat off, then he was performing very well again. I don't know if there's anything crazy in this. I do believe that McLaren would prefer Lando to win, however. That is true. I think both can be true. Like, I don't think McLaren is sabotaging Oscar, but I do think they want Lando to win. It's not necessarily, like, you know, I think both of those things can be true. But I don't know. People will certainly have opinions on that, which is interesting. Obviously, we've seen it in the Aussie Senate. Actually, there was another tweet that I had up here just before we discuss some other things. So one of these guys in the Australian Senate, he said, "Do you think McLaren is biased against Oscar and costing him the championship or something?" And I don't really know what the context of this was, but they were talking about Oscar getting sabotaged in the Australian Parliament and all that. And Zach Brown says, what does Zach Brown say? I saw what the senator said. Clearly, he is very uninformed and uneducated about our sport. That's the cool thing about sport. People get very supportive of their heroes, of their countries. So I'm not surprised to see people waving the flag for their drivers. So, you know what? Fair enough. I guess a reasonable assessment. Yeah, again, there's lots of drama this season. If Oscar has a slow stop, will they swap with Lando? It depends on the circumstances. If it was a similar thing to what happened back in Monza, I think the Monza one is probably the most outrageous of everything that has happened this season. So yeah, I don't know. Will they swap with Lando? It depends on the position in the race, I think. If they were first and second and Max has crashed out with George turn one, I don't think they do. And also, in that hypothetical world, would Oscar ever give up the position? Like, I think more highly of Oscar than to give up the place unless it is absolutely inevitable what the situation will be. Like, if Oscar's running first and seconds, or let's say Lando's running first and Oscar's seconds, and Max is out of the picture, and Lando has a slow stop and Oscar comes out ahead. It's like, if they tell him to give the place back, if I'm Oscar, I'm like, well, no, because as it stands, I've at least got a chance to win this title. Lando would still be winning the championship at that point, but I think Oscar would be within his right to hold stations. The question, of course, becomes, well, what if on the final lap the positions are such that actually it was going to be Max that won? In which case, I don't really see why Oscar wouldn't just say, you know what, it's been a pleasure. Prefer Lando to win it than Max, but who knows? Do you think Piastri will leave after 26, 27? I don't think this will last if McLaren stay competitive. To be honest, I've been saying that for a long time. Like, I was probably saying that from the first third of the season. Because, again, it's one of these things, right? Whenever you've got teams that they try and have two number one drivers and they love to say to the press, I mean, McLaren are especially guilty of this. I'm not defending McLaren massively today. I don't see enough evidence of sabotage to believe that, but I also don't like the way that McLaren have handled it. I also don't like the way that they handle things from a media perspective when they're all like, oh, our drivers are such good friends. Everyone gets along so well. Like, we've got this great dynamic. Remember what happened in Hungary last year, whatever it was, it was last year when they were on the radio to Lando being like, oh, you know who you're going to need to win the championship at some point? You're going to need your teammate of the team and all this bollocks. It's like, well, okay, whatever. McLaren can play that PR game, but the reality is that it's never all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly. Like Sainz and Albon, Albon the first half of the season was very good. Sainz the second half of the season has been very good. You know, Williams aren't choosing between their drivers. It is what it is. But if you put Sainz and Albon in a top car and they had the best car by a mile, you know, things would get tasty, wouldn't they? I mean, maybe you think Sainz is just way better, which is also fair. But like, take two drivers that are similar in ability. So, look, I don't think the McLaren dynamic lasts. I especially don't think the dynamic lasts because of Mark Webber. I don't think Mark Webber's happy with what's happening at McLaren. I think he feels that Oscar Piastri's been dealt a harsh hand. Again, I think sabotage is too strong of a word, but like I do think there is some level of favoritism. Not to say that they've like destroyed Oscar's car or something, but I do believe that they didn't box Oscar in Qatar because they knew that they would disadvantage Lando if they double stacked. And if it had been the other way around, I think they may have done the same thing. So, I don't know. But I don't think Oscar lasts here forever. And Oscar, he's done very well, right? Like, he's proved that he's a quality driver and he's race-winning capable. He may still win the championship. You never know. He's got an outside chance this weekend of making it happen. And I think that he will have interest from other teams. And Mark Webber will be having those discussions. So, it is what it is. As Webb says, who do I personally want to win? It's a good question, that. I think for some time, look, as a Brit, I do have some inherent British bias. I would like the British driver to win. Who do I think? But I think I don't really mind massively. If Piastri wins, I will feel that he has deserved it to an extent, but I think that his mid-season slump and the Lando, the Zandvoort 18 points, which he lost, and then the disqualification in Las Vegas, which cost Lando 6 points over Oscar and already would have had the title wrapped up. So I think that Oscar would be a deserving champion, but I think that if Max wins, I would also not be unhappy. I mean, I'm not really going to be unhappy, whatever, right? Like, at the end of the day, before I made content about F1 or just about things in general, I used to be more engaged in like who I wanted to win and more passionate maybe. But now I make content, I still like have favorite drivers and whatever, but I care more about something entertaining, right? Like I'm more interested in the story than what happens. So like if Max wins, it'll be an amazing story if Max wins, and he will have really done a lot to get to that point, right? It'd be remarkable if Max does win it. And look, as I've said in videos, I think McLaren would deserve it if, like, McLaren would deserve to lose. Like, if Max wins, then McLaren have earned their loss in this sense. But I will feel bad for I think Lando and Oscar to a degree, whoever loses out of those two, just because this might be their only chance, right? Like, this is, you never know. Next year, the talk is not about McLaren, it's about Mercedes. And okay, it might be about both, and maybe McLaren is still on top next year, we don't know. They've obviously got an incredibly strong technical team, and we think the Mercedes engine is going to be really good. But also, we are aware that this could be the only ever chance. Like, as I say, for the last 16 consecutive seasons, the driver's champion has been a Red Bull or a Mercedes driver. And you go back a year before that, you find Jenson Button in a Brawn. You go back a year before that, you find Hamilton in a Mercedes. Then you find Raikkonen in a Ferrari. Then you find Alonso in a Renault. So then it's obviously the Schumacher era. So like, it's very difficult to say that McLaren are going to have other opportunities. So this might be it. And I think if Lando loses it this year, it will be, that will be tough because of the things that happened during the season. As I say, the Zandvoort DNF, he's obviously made his own mistakes as well. But I think Lando's performance across like Austin to a degree, but certainly Mexico, Brazil, those were some championship-worthy weekends. And if Lando can hold his nerve, I think he will have enough. Last race for Sauber. Sorry, I can't. I see a lot of you guys making comments here. I'm sorry if I'm missing comments and interesting talking points, but sometimes I just go on a ramble and then I look back at the chat. But yeah, last race for Sauber. It's pretty cool to see Peter Sauber there. Obviously, they're becoming Audi. I hope they have a good conclusion, right? Kick Sauber, whatever. What a tenure, I guess. I don't know. Is it the end for Sauber? Could they still come back in some form? I wouldn't count it out entirely, but it's been a good ride for Sauber. I think they've always just been since I've followed the sport, Sauber have always been there in some form or another, pretty much. Hamilton was in the McLaren. Did I not say Hamilton the McLaren? Maybe I said that wrong. But 2008, obviously Hamilton the McLaren. Okay, a few other things to discuss because we've got to talk about what happened in practice real quick. So early it was kind of all over the place. This was a few minutes to go. So yeah, with 3 minutes on the clock, Russell had the fastest lap, which stayed the case until the end. And Verstappen was not massively satisfied with the car jumping around. Now it appears that since they banned the flexi wings, the porpoising has to some extent returned. The porpoising, the bouncing, the jumping around, the bottoming out, it is a problem again since the flexi wings are gone when they're chasing that final little hundredth of performance. And that is affecting the drivers. Again, in Qatar, there were no issues with plank wear. And I'm not expecting issues this weekend, but we know, they do take a lot of curb around Abu Dhabi. There are certainly some corners where the plank is exposed. So, I don't know. All I'm saying is that on Sunday, whatever happens during the race, until the results are official and they're classified and the FIA and the scrutineers have done their checks, then it will, the driver who wins the title will have to wait before fully celebrating and lifting that World Championship trophy. But yeah, we'll see. I also did see a comment on, well, a couple of comments. So one on Yuki and one on Russell. Now, speaking of Yuki, we've got to go through this real quick. So this was Lando. I think he was doing maybe a second push lap on these same set of tyres coming around turn, I don't even know what this is, turn 11, turn 12 or something. And, well, going into the hotel section. Now, Yuki Tsunoda here looks like he's going to hold to the right to get out of the way, but he pulls over to the left-hand side. Lando has to make evasive action and, has a bit of a, moment on the front left as well. Obviously keeps it out of the wall, but yeah, this was actually a huge high-speed corner. This could have been an unbelievable crash. And I just wonder, right, because we saw the day before, we saw Max at turn 1 yesterday, and Lando have a bit of a moment. Max was kind of on the racing line at turn 1. GP had told him, oh, it looks like Lando's not starting a lap. Oh, no, he actually is. Again, this is not on Tsunoda. This is, I don't think this is Yuki's fault. I don't think he did this maliciously. He put his hand up to apologize. I think they're still investigating this. I don't imagine, given that it's practice, that there will be, repercussions for Yuki. But, I just wonder what his engineer was telling him, right? And that's, I don't know, I'm not trying to get too conspiratorial, but I do wonder a little bit because of the two incidents that we've had, really, of major impeding this weekend, both of them have been on Norris and both of them have been a Red Bull. So, it's almost a little bit too good to be true. And maybe it was just a mistake. More than likely, it was probably just a mistake and a coincidence. But, was Yuki's engineer looking at the radar saying, oh, I could tell Yuki about Lando, or maybe I just won't. We'll see what happens, just to get in Lando's head a little bit. I don't know. Regardless, Lando he's been the class of the field so far this weekend, although he was not fastest in this most recent practice session. Before we get there, we've got to talk about the crash that Hamilton had. So we'll talk about another thing on Yuki in a second. But yes, this is kind of interesting because at this point in the practice session, the Ferrari was actually looking all right. It was about half an hour to go. Hamilton had actually put in a lap that was fastest shortly before this. Then Verstappen went a little bit quicker. Then Hamilton was on another lap and he was only a tenth down after the first two sectors. Now, it is worth keeping in mind, at least yesterday, the Ferrari was atrocious in the final sector. They were losing a load of time in the final sector. I don't know if that was drastically different today. Leclerc said that he was quite happy with how the car felt in the high speed, but in the slower speed, obviously a challenge. Now, what was notable about this is you can see how low they're running that Ferrari. You can actually see, right? You can see the bouncing, right? So Hamilton comes into this corner here. His car's bouncing about. You can actually see it very visibly, how he's bouncing up and down. He bottoms out and then he loses the rear and he's into the barriers. So, yeah, look, is Hamilton having a hard time lately? Yes, but let's not forget what we saw this Ferrari do in Qatar when, he was absolutely on a knife edge and Charles Leclerc had that huge spin in qualifying, right? So I think it's probably a bit of both. It's obviously difficult for Hamilton from a confidence perspective going into this afternoon, qualifying in 32 minutes time after a spin and a crash like this. In the end, it worked out all right. I mean, he crashed in front first. He's broken the front suspension, but most things on that car will be all right. So, yeah, it could have been worse, but definitely a big moment. I saw De Kessa make some comment on it and says that the car's running lower, and in the high speed, it works better. So, again, I wonder if Ferrari have decided, well, we're fourth in the championship anyway. Let's push the limit on ride height, and if we get disqualified for plank wear, we get disqualified, like we did back in China. So I don't know about that, but they're running the car a lot lower. You could see it in the corner. I know that Hamilton said on the radio that he felt like something buckled at the front, so we'll see if it's difficult without having looked at the car to say exactly whether it was the car broke or whether it was, well, I mean, okay, you can obviously say driver error to a degree, but also you could see the car bouncing and hitting the bottom and then losing the traction at the rear. So I think it's a consequence of the Ferrari being what it is. And as Takesa says, like, you know, basically a bounce on the entry lightened up the rear of the car, and then Hamilton was off into the barriers. So yeah, of course, not ideal. Hamilton says something buckled at the front and snapped at the rear end. So yeah, it snapped the car out of alignment at the rear. It's got a pretty cool helmet, actually, this weekend, to be fair, so we'll see what happens there. The other drama was Antonelli running into the side of Yuki Tsunoda and damaging the rear of his car. So this is going to be investigated. I'm sure that Mercedes are probably going to be suffering some sort of consequences for this. So, look, the other thing I wanted to say on Yuki is what happens tomorrow when it comes to team orders from the Yuki side, right? Now, this is also maybe true when it comes to Hadjar and Lawson again, right? Red Bull effectively have 4 cars driving for them. If there was to be a situation, now I don't think Red Bull could make it this obvious, but let's say hypothetically, the 2 Racing Bulls start on the hards and they do a very nice long stint. They both stay within each other's DRS, and then Lando comes, you know, he pits, he comes through, and then he has to overtake them, and all of a sudden, instead of overtaking 1 Racing Bull, he's got 2 Racing Bulls, both in DRS of one another, fighting for position. It becomes more challenging. So I don't think that's going to happen. It would also be pretty outrageous for Red Bull to deploy the second team like that. But we know that in the past, like, you know, if there is a situation where one of them is fighting Lando for position, they will certainly fight him harder than they would fight Max, hypothetically. Again, in 2021, Hamilton had to win the race, and so did Max. Whereas this year, that is not quite the case, right? Lando can come third, and it's good enough. So that does change the picture to a degree. But they will, you know, we know what Red Bull are like. They will be sending Yuki out on a kamikaze mission. Maybe kamikaze is too strong. I don't think they're going to use him to take Lando out. But, you know, if let's say Tsunoda qualifies P12 today and he starts the race on the hard tyres, are they just going to box him and run a normal strategy? Like, no, right? They're going to do something. They're going to leave him out there to try and hold up Lando, just like Perez did. It is what it is. But I think that requires Tsunoda to qualify better. And that's probably not going to happen. Yeah, Yuki going out on ultra hards and just being told, all right, Yuki, preserve the tire, preserve the tire, preserve the tire. We need something left when Lando tries to make a move. So that, I'm sure that will happen, right? Like, I know that Horner's not there anymore, but like, come on. Okay, yeah, you're right. I mean, in 2021, they had to finish ahead of one another. That, you know what I'm saying anyway. Whereas in this, it's not quite the case because they were tied on, was it 390.5 or whatever it was, in terms of points into the final rounds. So that's that. Thought it was also interesting that Norris had some Flovis on his final run. And it was kind of interesting because he did go, I think they removed a little bit of wing. So he had a little bit less downforce on this final run. It's going to be very interesting what this means for tomorrow in the race, because Red Bull have made it quite clear that they are focusing on race pace. They did a lot of race running yesterday, and they want to be faster in the race so that Max doesn't necessarily need to send a dive bomb turn 1. McLaren, it seems, they will have the race pace anyway, but they do seem to be running a bit more downforce. I mean, you can tell by Lando's rear wing that there's quite a lot of load on that compared to some of the others. But they took a little bit of it away, and as a result, he was green, but then yellow. And he only gained about a 10th on Russell through the final sector. So, yeah, I think on this occasion, he was running a little bit lower downforce than he has done, but it was incredibly close at the top. So, yeah, I know people are fighting in the comments. I should probably ban some of these clowns, actually. But, you know, it is what it is. The other thing is Russell was first. Max was a 10th behind in the ends. So, yeah, these are the overall standings anyway. So it was interesting for Mercedes because they weren't very good yesterday. And then earlier today, they weren't great either. So, all right, these clowns are going to get banned, unfortunately. Nice try. Nice try. How do I do this? We can do one of these. Timeout or something. All good. Thanks for all the support, everyone, as ever. Anyway, so Russell was P1, Norris is P2, Max P3. Now, Alonso was up there as well. I did see something kind of interesting, that Alonso was... that the Aston Martin guys were very late in the garage last night. They broke the curfew and were working on Alonso's car. So I don't know if they found something with Aston Martin, because there was also Stroll today. Stroll, he was P1 for some time. So that was very interesting. But George wants to win the race, fundamentally. George wants to win the race. And both of the Hasses are up there. Both of the Hasses faster than the Ferraris. Shock, right? So, yeah, the Haas seems to be a very competitive car here. Qualifying is going to be mega. It's going to be mega. It's really cool to see Haas up there as well. I mean, yeah, what a ride, right, for Ollie Behrman, because I'm sure that Ollie at some point would like to get the promotion to Ferrari, but is Ferrari a promotion from Haas right now? We'd always talked about this with Red Bull, right? It's like, is Red Bull going to Red Bull a promotion compared to Racing Bulls? But, okay, Ferrari is a promotion from Haas, you know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying anyway. So that is that. Couple of things to mention. This is one of them. So, fastest sector times in practice 3. First sector, as you'd expect, because it's basically one corner, is very close. Max, Lando, Alonso, Piastri, Russell, Antonelli, even Albon, but all of those guys within half a tenth, right? So, very close in sector 1. Sector 2 is all straight line speed, pretty much, and a chicane. Russell was fastest there. Verstappen was close. Norris was quite a way down, right? So Norris was nearly 2 tenths he lost in the middle sector compared to Russell, and a tenth and a half to Max. Piastri lost another half a tenth compared to Norris. But the final sector, that was all Lando. He was 3 tenths quicker than anyone else in sector 3, which is wild. That's not going to be the case this afternoon. I think that McLaren, again, they may have to make a bit more of a compromise, because you don't want to run too much downforce, because then you might just be a sitting duck in the race potentially. But also, the more downforce you run, the more you protect the tyres, the better long run race pace you're going to have. They're probably going to try and one-stop it. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's interesting to see Piastri 4th slowest in the middle sector. Of course, Hamilton's time's a little bit unrepresentative because he didn't do the fast laps at the end because he'd already crashed. So, maybe, I mean, if Leclerc's on a 36.2, Hamilton would have probably been quicker than Piastri as well. So, Piastri was near enough the slowest man in the middle sector today in practice, which is, yeah, interesting. The final sector is all about McLaren. Russell wasn't far away, but yeah, that was the difference really for Lando, right? So that's where it'll be won and lost. And Max could only get within, again, he could only get within 3 tenths of Lando in the final sector. So yeah, I think a surprise P3 for Yuki with Max. If Yuki's P3, wow, I will be there. But I'm not sure I can justify a Yuki P3 prediction based on what we have seen this season and this weekend so far. Behrman's up there, Piastri's up there. The other data to look at is this. So this is your top speeds on the fastest lap. And, well, it's interesting. Now, I think Max, did he get a bit of a toe on his fastest lap in the end? Or maybe this was, I don't know. He definitely got a toe on one of the laps, but I'm not sure that it was on necessarily the one I was thinking of on his final run. So maybe it is Max has got his engine cranked up to the absolute maximum because he's got that new engine, which I'm not sure I've seen any guarantees, but that new engine might well be back in the car. The engine that they took out of the car in Qatar because they were somewhat concerned about reliability. But, it's probably back in, isn't it? Because he's at 333, which is 3 kph faster than Tsunoda was. So, yeah, looks like Max's engine is cranked to the 9s. And he's got 5 kph on Norris and Piastri in a straight line, which is a pretty sizable advantage. And I think just on that basis, Verstappen will be a fact. if Verstappen isn't, he will be third at bare minimum, I think. I don't see Verstappen qualifying any lower than that, to be honest. But the other contenders, it's very interesting because Antonelli was about 0.4 off Russell at the end, but also he had the crash with Tsunoda. So that caused him a little bit of damage, I think. And obviously it wasn't ideal for his confidence and his preparation for the lap. So I think that Antonelli could be a factor as well. But that's pretty much where it stands going into qualifying today. Why would Yuki help Max when Red Bull is sacking him? Well, they're actually not sacking him. He's staying on as a test and reserve driver, which in my opinion is a tactical approach by Red Bull so that they can, so that they make sure Yuki is still there to do their bidding. That's at least my perspective. They probably would have done that anyway. But yeah, his Red Bull career is obviously over in terms of driving for the team, but he's still part of Red Bull. If they were getting rid of him completely, then Yuki would, I don't see a reason why Yuki would be so keen to help, let's say. But in this circumstance, it's probably not. I don't know. I doubt that he's going to have too much problem doing the team game at that point. What would be interesting, hypothetically, if Yuki was somehow winning the race? We know that he's gone well around Abu Dhabi before. Like, remember 2021... I think Yuki was he fourth? Was he fifth? Something like that at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 21. Obviously gets overshadowed by the events of the final few laps, but he still had a good race that time. So Yuki does go quite well around here. But yeah, I don't know. If Yuki was magically winning the race, then what do you do, right? Like, imagine Yuki was winning, but if he yielded position to Max, then Max wins the championship. What do you do if you're Yuki? Yeah, it was fourth. Yeah, what do you do if you're Yuki, right? It's like, do I get my first and probably only ever Grand Prix win? Or do I give Max the title, right? Obviously, the team have one opinion, but personally, I might just be like, you know what, Max? If you want this title, you got to overtake me on the track, baby. That is, no team orders here. But I don't know about that. I did think Yuki would be near podium this year. I thought Yuki might have a chance of a podium, but yeah, it's not looking great this weekend, especially after the damage a little bit earlier. Is the Red Bull engine being added to the budget for 2025? I don't think they've come up with an answer to that question yet, actually. I'd imagine that the answer is probably going to be yes, but we'll see. Can Yuki pull a Perez 2021? I think, so the way that Perez did it was Hamilton overtook him down the first straight, and then Perez got the DRS back down the second straight. Can Yuki do that to Norris, hypothetically, if he was called upon? Maybe, but it's just, again, it feels even more difficult this year. And you've also got to remember, the DRS isn't quite as effective as it was back in 2021. Like, in 2021, the DRS was super, super strong. But it's not quite as strong in these regulations. So I think it will be harder for Yuki to stay ahead, just naturally. And also Perez in 21 was not fantastic, but he was better than Yuki has been this year. That is for sure. So Yuki is not going to be P1. Yeah, okay, you're right. Yuki's not going to be P1. But people like talking about Yuki, so it is what it is. See what else we got to talk about here before the Grand Prix gets underway. Probably got a starting grid that we can, some sort of numbers we can look at as well. But we can also do some predictions for who is going to stick it on pole position. Actually, we've got one here from the F1 account themselves. So, yeah, here we go. Let me do a poll in the chat. I might do a couple of polls just so we can narrow things down a little bit. So, okay, pole position. Let's do, let's just put the key contenders in there. We'll do Ver and we'll do Russell and we'll see what you guys think. And then we can go down the grid and figure it out from there as well if you want. In the new regulations, Hadjar will have an advantage, similar to Checo, that when he was closer to Max in terms of pace, as development continues, will likely be an advantage to Max. Yeah, I agree with that. I think we saw Hadjar actually talk to Martin Brundle just before earlier today, and he kind of said a similar thing. It was like, well, if there's any time to join, it's probably going to be right now. So, yeah, we'll see. Oscar needs to get as far away from Zach Brown as possible. I think it will happen, right? Like we talked about it earlier with the show, but I think that Oscar and he won't be at McLaren, I don't think, too much longer. But that's just he'll be there next year, but I think in 2027, in the same way that Charles Leclerc will be looking at other options, then yeah, I think he will also consider other options. You also never know what Aston Martin are going to do, what they're going to look at. Aston Martin will be very interested. Like, if they can get Max, of course they will. But, you know, let's be honest, both of Aston Martin's seats are going to be up for grabs in the next couple of years, right? Like, Alonso, he's got a kid on the way. Like, I think his girlfriend's pregnant, and she has been for some time. So he's about to be a father. He's, 44, 45 next year. You know, Alonso's got probably another year. He's still driving very well, but I think realistically he's got another year or two maximum. And surely Lance Stroll doesn't stay around much longer, right? Like, you got to think eventually he's just going to go and do WEC, or he's going to go and, I don't know, play tennis or something. Remember that rumor a couple of years ago that he was going to quit and become a pro tennis player or something? So maybe play paddle or whatever it's called. So I feel like both seats are available, right, at Aston Martin at some point. Obviously, there's been lots of rumours about Max, trying to get him. They'd be very interested. There's also been plenty of rumours about Charles Leclerc going to Aston Martin. Oscar Piastri has been linked there as well. Obviously, there's been some interest about Red Bull because you've got, if Max were to leave, they would need a driver, Red Bull. And, you know, I don't know if that would be optimal, but Mark Webber, there's some history there. There's some relationship there. We've got MAGA Canadian in the chat. That's Yuki Suzuki. Hey, Rab, do you think Red Bull should have picked Alex Dunn over Lindblad this year? I do. Interesting question. I actually quite like Alex Dunn. He's a bit of a terrorist on the track, which is always entertainment. But I think Lindblad has shown enough to earn his opportunity. So I don't think they made the wrong decision there. They've also supported Lindblad for a long time, and one season in F2 doesn't really change my perspective on that. Lindblad did a good job today. He won the sprint race without too much difficulty. Rab trying hard to look for a seat for Max back to Newey. I'm just seeing the vision. You know, it's possible. Do you like Sprite cranberry? I like cranberry full stop actually. So I think I would. I don't know if I've had Sprite cranberry. Might need to give that a go. Okay, let's end the poll. You guys have the prediction. Norris 44%, Verstappen 36%, Russell 11%, Piastri 9%. So that's effectively the front row prediction. I'm also going to do another one, and I'm going to say star of qualifying. Oh, I don't know. Do I need to do this when it's people can just give any answer? Start a Q&A. I'm going to do that. Star of qualifying. And I'm just going to do it as a Q&A so people can you just like write an answer or something? I don't know if that's how it works. But I just thought it was interesting because who is going to be the star of the show in qualifying? Is it going to be the pole man who eventually gets in pole, or is there going to be another outside surprise? Because, of course, you've got Ollie Behrman, you've got Fernando Alonso, you've got, Nico Hulkenberg, Hamilton maybe makes a comeback. Who knows what's going to happen? Lewis out in Q1. I don't think Lewis will be out in Q1 this time. I think he'll make it. I think he'll make it through. I think the Ferrari is a little bit better around here, but we'll see. Hadja, Behrman, Alonso, Behrman, Norris, Lawson, Alonso, Kimi, Behrman. Yeah, look, big Behrman fan here. Big Behrman fan. So I'm on board with the Behrman shouts. I think Antonelli will be interesting to see how he gets on because he's not been rapid so far this weekend, but he could always throw a spanner into the works. But I think for Lando, he's just got to execute, right? Like, it's most of this track, it's not the hardest track in the world. There's a few key braking zones, but it's, you just got to let the car do the work. I think Lando will be, as long as he qualifies respectably. I'm really intrigued if it does end up with Lando and Max on the front row. Like, are we going to get what happened in in Las Vegas, because we know what happened in Vegas. Lando pulls over to cut the inside line, and then Max is when he goes deep into turn one, right? And then it caused issues for him. So who knows? Nico Rosberg. Look, I'm always happy to see Nico Rosberg back on comms, by the way, because Rosberg is immense entertainment for me. So we'll see about that. Watch it, Raylan. Lance Stroll on pole. I've got a feeling about Yuki, says Cindy. Hamilton, Yuki P6, Leclerc, Hadjar. Do we think that Liam Lawson is... Because, okay, I'll put it this way. If any of the Racing Bulls drivers are going to get involved in a little bit of, let's say, trickery, could Lawson be the one? I don't know. I'm intrigued. I want to see what happens on track, because I just have a feeling that Liam Lawson is going to get involved in some sort of drama this weekend. But again, I might be wrong about that. Both turn ones are similar. Well, exactly, yeah. Turn one, it's not too dissimilar, and it's because they start on the same side of the track in Vegas as they do in Abu Dhabi, so there's maybe something in that. Hadjar is Rookie of the Year. I think I agree that it can't be Antonelli for Rookie of the Year because he just had such an inconsistent stint. But I also believe that it could be Behrman. I mean, that may be bias, but I think it could be Behrman for Rookie of the Year. I think Hadjar still probably has it, but Behrman, to be fair, Behrman did make more mistakes. So... yeah, maybe that's not so true, but we'll see anyway. Who will have the number 33, Max or Alonso, if Lando gets lucky tomorrow? Might be luck, but we'll see. Well, Max wants the number 3. I don't know if you guys saw that, but he wants the number 3, but that used to be Daniel Ricciardo's number, because Max used to race with the number 3 when he was a kid. And then he went to 33 because he had to, effectively. Hadjar definitely Rookie of the Year. Rab has bias. No. Well, I mean, I am biased in favour of Behrman, I will admit. But also, like, Behrman has cooked, bro. Like, I don't know. I think there's some debate. Like, Hadjar's podium in Zandvoort was obviously spectacular, but so was Behrman's P4 in Mexico, and arguably the Racing Bulls has been a better car, and Behrman has consistently beaten Ocon, who most people consider to be a pretty quality midfield driver and is immensely experienced in Formula One, whereas Hadjar has beaten a Liam Lawson, who I still think is quite fraudulent. So I think there's a debate. I'm not going to say that I'm right, but I think that there's a discussion to be had about who the Rookie of the Year is. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Max also did talk about number 6 now, but I don't think that's going to happen. So was Kimi's P3 defense. Yeah, look, Kimi's also had his highs for sure. It's just Kimi's like mid-season inconsistency probably makes it a bit challenging to give it to Antonelli, but he has had some very recent ones. Kimi went from P17 to P3. That is true, you know. And again, it depends how you judge it, right? Do you judge it on highlight results, or do you judge it on consistency? Is Ocon overrated? Look, I also have always thought Ocon's a bit overrated, so I will give a little bit of like Behrman tax on that one. Rab, you should live stream commentary. I'm not going to lie. I stand up here for an hour to do these pre-shows and I'm absolutely shattered. So, like, I'm going to take a nice little sit down and watch qualifying and have a drink and have some carrot sticks with some hummus and get a cup of tea or whatever in about a few minutes' time before qualifying gets underway, because I can see Nico Rosberg in the pit, or not in the pit lane. He's in the paddock, the beautiful paddock they have in Abu Dhabi. It's hectic there this weekend. It really is hectic. There's energy in the venue in Abu Dhabi, that is for sure. With Russell teammate. That's also true. Antonelli's got one of the more competitive teammates on the grid, absolutely. Yuki Suzuki to win the 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix would be quite the finale. Yeah, well, of course I could sit down. Like, I obviously could sit down. It's not the standing up that tires me out. It's the non-stop talking for an hour. F1 Gamer is such a tool. Yeah, but F1 Gamer's got he's got all the stats and stuff. And maybe I'll just have to steal his whole flow. But I do agree. If I have F1 Gamer's channel on, I'm not listening to his commentary respectfully. But it's good what he does. I mean, it's obviously good, but it's also probably F1 might not be very happy about that. I don't know. But Kev Blitz, YouTube recap, Tommy, you're my most watched channel. Thank you very much. Appreciated. Yeah, lots of you guys sending me YouTube recap stuff. I mean, like, to be fair, I do make quite a few videos, so it shouldn't be that hard. But yeah, thanks everyone. The fact that so many rookies come in and Ocon is still at the back shows a lot. Heavily overrated. Yuki already has an old spec floor, so will be at the back. He can definitely slow down Lando. Yeah, interesting. Maybe that's all part of the plan, right? All part of the plan. Antonelli has done it again. I'm just refreshing the timeline here. Okay, here we go. From Eric Van Haren, big update coming out of the Verstappen camp. Verstappen is driving the qualifying again with his latest engine, the one that was replaced last week, but it turns out it wasn't a big issue. So here we go, baby. Max has the spicy engine in the back of the car. Rob, he gets the data from us. Like, yeah, no, I know. He just goes on. He goes on multi-viewer and just puts all the data up. But like, obviously, you're meant to have F1 TV to get multi-viewer, so I'm not sure that, you know, Liberty Media would be so happy about that setup. But whatever, they don't seem to mind. Kumo says, Rab has been hostile to Lando all year. See, I disagree with that assessment. See, I think this like proves that I'm not that biased. I may be somewhat biased, but because some people say I'm absolute Lando fanboy, I hate Oscar, you know, only preying on his downfall, hate Max. Some people say, oh, I love, you know, clearly you love Max and you hate Lando or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, okay, maybe I have my favorites, but I don't think I've been unreasonable. Like I have criticized Lando for sure, but I've also praised him when he's done well, and he has done recently. So that's a mistake. The new engine isn't broken in. Is that a thing? Breaking in an engine? I don't know. It has been broken in. Didn't they use it in Vegas? I think they used it in Vegas. Yeah, they already did break it in a little bit. So it's pretty ideal. Yuki won't be anywhere near the front row as Antonelli broke his floor. Yeah, that is very unfortunate, actually. Rab, do you watch WEC? Occasionally. But I don't watch everything. I try and keep up with it in a little bit. You're a Russell fan. Look, I like George Russell. I'm not afraid to say it. So I'm supporting Russell for pole. My prediction for qualifying today, just before I close the show, is pole position, Max Verstappen. Max on pole, Russell second, Norris third, Piastri fourth, Antonelli fifth, Leclerc sixth, Alonso seventh, Hamilton eighth. It's probably not going to happen. Behrman 8th. Behrman 7th. All right. There you go. Watch this later. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Okay, awesome. Well, qualifying's about to start. I'm about to get a cup of tea and watch this, and I will see you all in a couple of hours when we recap what's happening in qualifying. It's a big day for the championship. Are there going to be any big surprises? We will see. Okay, take care, everyone.